During the past year, I've truly come to appreciate how much time and effort is involved in leading our congregation. And as a result, I have gained the utmost respect for all who have preceded me as president. Two of those people, Susan Cams and Jimmy Krasnow, will now share with us reflections from their time as president of our synagogue.
I was the first female president of Temple Aliyah. Esther Jean would have been president first, but I won't go into that. I was president in 1991 when Rabbi Schoenberg announced that he was going to leave the temple for a job in New York. Alan Greenfield formed a search committee, and after interviewing several rabbis, we invited Rabbi Perkins to come lead services one Shabbat. He and Alana stayed at my house. I remember how pleasant it was walking back and forth from the temple to my house with them. And I think Glenn and Elisa Levine were with us too. Glenn was my right-hand man all the time. Recently, when I look back at a scrapbook that my mother kept for me of my temple years, my presidency years, I see that the board was invited to my house for dessert, for lunch, and the whole congregation was invited to my house for dessert. And what a wonderful weekend that was.
I remember my presidency, we only had about 75 members, and I sort of equate my time and that of Jimmy Carter, quiet president, with a cohesive group. And at that time, this area was starting to develop, and it had good points and bad points, and I'll let you decide, because if we needed a minion, we knew who was living in next door or down the street, and they were the ones that called for the minion, and we always had a minion. It was kind of quiet, but we needed a cantor. So this young physicist showed up, and after 2.5 hours of either he interviewing us or we interviewing them, we hired him, and he was here for over 25 years.
As I think back, I remember going to Shabbat services every weekend with my daughter Lisa. The congregation was small then, so we often had trouble having a minyan on Shabbat morning. And each weekend, Lisa and I would walk up those creaky old stairs in the old farmhouse because the chapel was upstairs. Everyone would hear us coming, they'd hold their breath, they'd turn around and look at us, and they'd say, "Oh, women," because women were not counted in the minyan in those days. Things have certainly changed, and now my daughter Lisa and her family are members of Temple Aliyah.
About the same time, Temple Beth Jacob of Mattapian was sort of winding down, and they had decided to move to Newton Four Corners, which at that time was a funeral parlor. And they eventually joined us, and we inherited their goods as well as the cemetery. And one of the things was for us to go over there, pick up what we wanted, and bring it back here to the farmhouse. Luckily, we had a member, Irving Case, who was in the trucking business, who had a big enough truck. And Fred Slavitt, Saul Mendelson, Chet Feldman, myself, and a couple of other guys went over there. The candelabras you see in the small chapel were from Beth Jacob. But the thing of the evening was, these pews on the side, and don't try to lift them, we inherited from them. And it was very easy getting it from the first floor of their building onto the truck. But for those who remember, getting it up the stairs of the farmhouse, it was a 45-degree angle. So thanks to the guys, we finally did it. But we never thought that we'd go from an old funeral home where the benches were going to be the death of us trying to get them up the stairs.
I often fondly look back at the summer of 1988. Rabbi Schoenberg wrote a script for a movie about two cousins, two boys who were going to celebrate their bar mitzvah. The movie was filmed in the home of Temple Aliyah congregants, and there actually actually famous actors in it. The two boys were played by Josh Saviano from The Wonder Years and David Moscow from Big. Many members of the congregation were extras in the movie, and those that weren't would come to our homes just to watch the filming. It was a great experience for all of us.
One major accomplishment that we got Needham schools to close for the high holidays. They started with just one day, and that was awkward for conservative kids. The Rabbi at Beth Shalom would tell his kids to try and stay out for both days as not to confuse the rest of Needham about Jewish observance.
In the scrapbook that my mother kept for me, I also saw that in 1990, I wrote a letter to the congregation telling them that the architect's plans for a new synagogue, this synagogue, were ready for their review. We had to ask the entire congregation to help us financially, or the building would not become a reality. Steve Weinstein, my brother, spearheaded the entire project. We were so surprised and pleased that almost every one of the congregants gave us more than they could afford because Temple Aliyah meant so much to them.
One of the toughest jobs a president has is raising money. And I'm not being an accountant or a lawyer, I had to think of a great idea. And what I came up with was what I will tell you now. I told the congregation of Rosh Hashanah that the day before I had received a phone call from the Internal Revenue Service who wanted to meet me at the temple. And meeting me at the temple, he said, "Show me your temple." I said, "This is it." He says, "Well, that's impossible." I said, "Why is it impossible?" He said, "Well, I have a list here of all your congregants and what they say they donated to the temple." So needless to say, there were no cars left outside, and we beat the budget by 20%.
I always enjoyed speaking at bar mitzvahs. Everyone worked so hard for the temple, and I knew every family. And I just loved being able to talk about the families and how much they've done for the temple in a sanctuary full of all their friends and their relatives.
Being in a small temple, your jobs was always revolving. This week you could be on the ritual committee, next year you could be on the house committee, etc. One year, I ended up on the ritual committee, with Murray Davidson, and we received a phone call from Anna Robbins that a girl had been born and they wanted to name it. So the first thing I did was call Rabbi Castle. Rabbi Castle said, "I'm busy, I'm working." So then I conferred with Murray, and Murray said, "Well, you have a senior leader here, you name the baby." So I ended up naming Rachel Robbins, who I met a few months ago, who is now an adult with 2 grown children and very active in her temple.
Our lives revolved around the temple in those days. Many of my friends to this day, and my children's friends, are Temple Aliyah members. My daughter Sharon even married Eric Sheff, the son of wonderful people that we met at Temple Aliyah. I was president during the 25th anniversary of Temple Aliyah, and it's quite exciting to think that now we're celebrating our 50th.
If you see that I have one eye today, while I'm telling you what I remember, it's not that I'm sad. I'm just recalling that we had one hell of a good time and we're still functioning on 8 cylinders. Thank you.
Harvey Greenberg and Nancy Rachel will now read the names of our past presidents. Please stand when your name is read. And again, please hold your applause until all names have been read.
Harold Shapiro,
Nathan Green,
Roger Littman,
Morton Aronson,
Chester Feldman,
Howard Weiner,
Lawrence Joseph,
Jack Albert,
Alan Goldberg,
Fred Slatteter,
Neil Sachs,
Andy Newman,
Jimmy Krasnow,
Milton Goodman,
Susan Cams,
Alan Greenfield,
Carol Flashner,
Barry Charter,
Beth Moskowitz,
Margie and Gil Brodsky,
Leslie Reich,
Glenn Levine,
Peter Sorosky,
Stephen Baum,
Freddie Kay,
and Bruce Burns.